As many of you know, Demar Derozan has not had the easiest career in the NBA. Being the 9th overall pick in a loaded 2009 NBA draft, the Toronto Raptors drafted Demar Derozan out of the University of Southern California. Being that this was still the Chris Bosh Toronto Raptors, Derozan didn't have that big of a role, just putting up 8 points in 21 minutes per game in his rookie season. But after the 2010 season, when Chris Bosh took his talents to South Beach to join the Miami Heat with Dwayne Wade and LeBron James, this opened the door for Demar Derozan to show his full potential, and he did not give up that opportunity, upping his averages from 8 points per game to 17. The next 2 seasons, his averages would remain around the same at 16 points per game and 18, but going into the 2012-13 season, the Raptors would acquire, little did we know, his partner in crime, Kyle Lowry. Lowry was still sharing starting minutes with Jose Calderon at the time, but when the Raptors were still not winning and they saw the potential in Lowry, a trade had to be made. The Raptors ended up acquiring Rudy Gay in a 3-team trade, giving up Jose Calderon and a few role players. And at the time, this trade seemed very good for the Raptors. They got the star player that they desperately needed in Rudy Gay, and they still had talents like Derozan and Lowry aside him. But as you guys may know, this team never really worked out. And early in the 2013-14 season, the Raptors actually traded away Rudy Gay to the Sacramento Kings. The Raptors would receive multiple role players in John Salmons, Vasquez, Patrick Patterson, and Chuck Hayes. Raptor fans knew that Rudy Gay and Demar Derozan were not a good fit together. Not that they were bad players, but they had very similar play styles that couldn't fit well on the same team. But after this trade went down, the Raptors ended up flipping a switch. Derozan ended up becoming a first-time All-Star in the 2014 season, putting up 22 points per game. And his partner in crime, Kyle Lowry, who wasn't an All-Star in the 2014 season, but he upped his averages from 11 points to 18. These two would lead the Raptors to 48 wins in their first playoff appearance since 2008. However, the Raptors would lose in the playoffs to the 6-seeded Brooklyn Nets in a heartbreaking 7 games. This was also surprisingly the most points Derozan would average in the playoffs in his career at 24 points per game. Even though this was a very tough series for the Raptors to lose in 7 games, they knew that they would be back in the playoffs next year. This was a young, inexperienced team that only had room for improvement, and the 2014-15 NBA season was proving just that. Derozan did not make the 2015 All-Star team, but he definitely had the numbers for it, averaging 20 points per game. He also missed over 20 games in the beginning of the season due to injury. The Raptors would play the John Wall Bradley Beal Washington Wizards in the first round of the playoffs. And this series could not have been any worse for Demar Derozan and the Raptors. They lost in a 4-game sweep to the 5th-seeded Washington Wizards, with Derozan only averaging 20 points on 40% from the field. It has now been 2 years in a row where the Raptors had home court advantage of the first round of the playoffs and lost both series. With Derozan being the best player on the Raptors, a lot of this was on his shoulders for underperforming in the playoffs. However, things would turn out a lot better for the Raptors and Derozan in the following season. He would average a career high at the time 23 points per game and be named an All-Star for the second time. They would also reach the conference finals for the first time in franchise history, but lose in 6 games to LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Oh, little did Derozan know what was to come ahead. In the very next season, Demar Derozan would average a career high at the time 27 points per game, would get an All-Star nod for the 3rd time, and would reach All-NBA 3rd team for the first time. However, though, in the playoffs, the Raptors would get swept by the Cavaliers in the 2nd round. And this is when LeBronto started to become a thing. This has now been 2 years in a row where LeBron has beat the Raptors in the playoffs. I also forgot to mention that going into the 2016-17 season, Demar Derozan signed a 5-year, $139 million contract with the Toronto Raptors. He also didn't look at any offers from other teams and instantly re-signed with the Raptors as soon as free agency hit. He was letting it be known that he wanted to win in Toronto. In 2018, he would lead the Raptors to a franchise record 59 wins, be named an All-Star for the 4th time at just 28 years old, and reach All-NBA 2nd team for the first time in his career. Things in Toronto just kept on getting better and looking more promising. However, in the playoffs, LeBronto would strike again. In the 2nd round, the Raptors faced the Cavs, and the Cavs would beat the Raptors again in 4 games. Mind you that this was the Cavs without Kyrie, who were a 4th seed with 50 wins, against the Raptors, who were a 1st seed with 59 wins. It has now been 3 years in a row where LeBron and the Cavs have beat the Raptors, with 2 of them being a sweep. With Derozan putting up amazing regular season numbers but not performing so well in the playoffs, his future with the Raptors started to look a bit concerning as trade talks started to come up. Derozan has stated in the past that he would love to play his career in Toronto, and he even signed that huge contract extension without even looking at any other teams. But the Raptors were in a win-now mode, and they knew Derozan was not that player to get them to a championship. So in the 2018 offseason, the Raptors pulled the trigger and traded Demar Derozan to the San Antonio Spurs for Kawhi Leonard. This trade shook DeRozan, and rightfully so. He was told by the Raptors GM that he was not going to be traded that offseason, and he ended up getting traded. DeRozan wasn't so bad for the Spurs though. In the 3 years he played there, he averaged 21-22 points per game. But with him not making any All-Star teams during that time and being in his early 30s, us NBA fans thought we've seen the best of DeRozan already. But in the 2021 offseason, Demar Derozan would land a 3-year, $81 million contract with the Chicago Bulls. At the time, this is a very, very puzzling acquisition for the Bulls, as they already had Zach LaVine and now they are adding Demar Derozan, who are very similar players. And this was even labeled the worst free agency signing in the offseason at the time. And I can see why. He played for the San Antonio Spurs, who get like no media attention, and they didn't make the playoffs the past 2 years he was there. So yeah, DeRozan has been flying under the radar for the past couple years, but the Bulls had a very solid team going into the season with new pickups Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso along with DeRozan. The Bulls started the season hot, winning 26 out of their first 36 games. And in the midst of that hot start, DeRozan did something that has never been done before. Hit 2 game-winning 3-pointers in a row on back-to-back nights against the Pacers on New Year's Eve and the Wizards on New Year's Day. Just incredible. DeRozan also set another record that hasn't been done since the great Wilt Chamberlain. He scored 35 or more points in 8 straight games, and in all of those games he shot 50% or above. Some people were saying this was labeled the worst free agency signing this year, and this man signed a 3-year contract for $82 million and he averaged 27, 5, and 5. Do you know how big of a bargain that is for the Chicago Bulls? And we were all shocked at the time of this signing. The Bulls had to deal with a lot of injuries during the season and didn't finish off the season so strong with a 46-36 record. They ended up losing in the first round of the playoffs to the Milwaukee Bucks in a disappointing 5 games. DeRozan did drop 41 points in a Game 2 win, but the Bucks were simply the better team against the injured and depleted Bulls. Going into this offseason, Zach LaVine was a free agent, but he re-signed with the Bulls for 5 years, $215 million. I'm very excited to see what the Chicago Bulls team could do next season healthy, because this last season, they looked very promising with a healthy roster. But to recap this video, Demar Derozan had a very up and down career with his all-time highs on the Raptors and his all-time lows being suddenly traded by the franchise he was so loyal to. I'm excited to see what Derozan could do this upcoming season after coming off a career year and finishing All-NBA second team. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Drop a like and subscribe. I'd appreciate it so much, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.